and welcome to another episode of the Wanderlust Wealth Show. Today, I have a fabulous real estate investor and the owner of the Good Neighbor Realty, which is a boutique short-term rental brokerage here in Denver, Colorado. I am so excited to have you on this show, Chantal. Welcome.
Thanks, Olivia. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Okay, so Chantal, you have just a really phenomenal story. So before we even get into like the real estate and the brokerage and all of that, tell me first, who was Chantal before all of the real estate and investing and everything?
Oh my goodness. I mean, Chantal has been a lot of different things before. I would say like as soon as I graduated college, I started as an event manager. And actually I was doing this while I was in college. So I was like full-time working events. I was doing nonprofit stuff. And then I was like, man, like this is a lot of work and for not that much income. And it was really not a great use of my skill set. Like I was good at the like client facing stuff, but when it came to like the admin and like the tedious organization, it was like not great for me. And so I kept on telling them like, hey, I'd really love to get into sales. And they were like, we don't know about that. Like you studied event management. And so we think, because that's what I did in school, I was in hospitality, really difficult major.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, you never know.
No, I'm going to an engineer. It was like the easiest major ever.
That's fair. That's fair. I feel like most things were easier than engineering, though, to be fair.
This was a very easy major, but they made me get a job, which is great. So event management. And then I was like, I'd really love to get into sales. And my aunt at the time was in pharmaceutical sales. And she was like, Chantal, I don't have any time to train you. Like, this is super hot right now. Like, we're selling this, this, and this. Here's a script pad. Go and like establish relationships with doctors, ask for them to prescribe this like great thing for their patients and like go from there. And so then I started doing like door to door, like physician offices and was like literally learning how to pronounce the medications.
Oh
like,
my God.
Them. I learned from them correcting me, unfortunately. But honestly, it was like a really good career. And then I just like, as I was going from doctor's office to doctor's office, I was like, man, I would really like to have another option outside of just medical sales. Because if I don't show up to doctor's offices, first off, like everybody's happy that the medical rep doesn't show up to doctor's offices because you're interrupting them unless you're bringing like cookies or whatever. And then second off, I was like, I just can't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. And so that's when I fell into, books about becoming an investor and podcasts. And then I was like, I have to figure out how to become an investor, which led me into discovering I wanted to invest in real estate, which has brought me to where we're at today.
I love that. So it's so funny. I remember, I think either you said this on a podcast or you wrote this down somewhere, but it was like behind every real estate investor is like an ex-burnt out corporate employee or like sad corporate employee. And I'm like, that is so true because so many of us kind of get into the space because we just had a wall with whatever we're doing. And it could be in corporate, it could be in school, it could be whatever. And just knowing deep down inside yourself that you were meant to do something else.
For sure. And I think too, especially now people are starting to realize like the fragility of just everything from like your career to even people are feeling like that in their investments. And so for me, it was another outlet for me to create another stream of income, another source of like building my wealth outside of just what I was doing with my time Monday through Friday. And what like really hit and resonated with me is like, you could be making money in your sleep, which at that point was such a profound concept. And I know that listeners here in like your community and my community, it's very commonplace, but the idea of having something work when I was not physically showing up or even digitally showing up for me was such like an amazing concept and like something that compounds like bigger than what I put into it. Like that's the fundamentals of investing.
No, truly. And that's like, so I love my active businesses. I really do. Like I love my coaching business. I love the interior design work I do, all of that. But there's nothing quite like an investment property just spitting out money all the time and you just not having to be physically present anywhere at any point in time. Like it just always runs in the background. And I remember even when I was in Portugal last year, like I was barely working for 3 months, but my real estate was running in the background and it kept producing income versus like some of the other stuff that I do where I have to show up every single day.
Yes, it's such like an amazing thing to have something that, and I know a lot of people too are like, oh, I'm so like nervous to like get into my first investment. But, for someone I was a 1099 employee when I was in the med sales staff. So I've been like commission based only for a really like large portion of my life. The real estate investing is like a security blanket for me. Like I'm like, I don't know exactly what's going to be happening in this, like commission-based job, but like my real estate is going to be making like on average, like X number of dollars a month. Like if it was a long-term rental, it would make this. If it was short-term rental, it would make this. Sure, there are ebbs and flows, but like it's been really consistent.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like a security blanket. And it's always funny because so many times people feel very differently that it's risky or
I know. I feel like my real estate is like the least risky thing that I'm doing, right? Yes. It's like literally that flotation device where if anything else happens, like I still got like people always need a place to stay. Worst case scenario, even if short-term rentals went away, right? Like people still need a place to stay.
What? They need room by room rentals. And so that's something that we like talk about a lot is like just understanding your exit strategy. And then like, I feel like it really just gives me like peace and confidence to know that like, okay, here's best case scenario, but here's worst case scenario. And you're right. Like people legitimately will always need a place to stay, whether long-term, short-term, mid-term, like it is a fundamental thing that people need.
Completely. So that first property, what was your first property? How did you get started?
Yeah. So my husband and I started, it's interesting. Like I started in wholesaling, I started in flipping. And so like, those were my first like properties. I bought a portfolio of horrible properties in Georgia for like niece. And after that, I was like, man, it would be really nice to invest in a market that I know and that is stable and growing and has a lot of economic drivers. And so we were like, you know what? We could start by buying our first home. And we did like a 3% down, like primary residence loan. And we were just shocked that a bank would give us as much as they did, because when I first started, I was like, oh no, they're going to be looking at everything. And like, time it felt like a lot, like, $500,000 from a bank. And, I can't pay that back for a long time. And so I was so nervous about that process. And so is my husband. But we ended up like buying the property, living in the upstairs. On a whim, we decided to short-term rent the basement. And it was only because our long-term tenant had actually fallen out. We were going to do and this was back in 2017. And so we started doing short-term rental. I was making like $3,000 a month on the basement at the time, when I was going to charge like $1,200 for long-term rent. And then we were like, why is nobody talking about it? In 2017. And so after that, we were like all in. We built a carriage home. My husband became a general contractor because he just loved renovating. And then we were like, well, we need to move out of here because we were renting the basement for $3,000. My mortgage was $3,000 at the time. The carriage home was making $5,000.
Oh my gosh.
And so we're literally like living there and making like $5,000 every month because of that. And then we moved out of the upper unit and started renting that for about $4,000. And so,
oh my gosh,
it just,
oh my gosh, that's insane. That is a beautiful property.
It's just like a 3-unit. And it's so funny because it's like, it's not a sexy investment. It's not in the best part of town. It's not in a horrible spot of town, but it's in a spot that's like close to a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's 3 units. I accommodate 2 to 4 guests. I've always rented it separately as opposed to together, just because of how this property is laid out. But it clears me it honestly clears us like $80,000 a year just
That's
off of that
crazy. Crazy.
It's crazy. And even if I were to buy it like today at today's interest rates, at today's value, it would still be like 35 to 40. And so like it's still like no matter what way you look at it, it makes sense.
Well, and that's why, so like, for example, my place in New Orleans, I remember at first I was looking at like the best parts of town because I was like, well, that's where everyone else lives. And the numbers just would not make sense. So I ended up going to like the other side of town, which was close enough, like even closer to like the French Quarter because I was in New Orleans. It was literally a 5-minute drive to the French Quarter. Super walkable. Yes, the area was still developing, but it was like right at that fringe where it was still okay. And the numbers, like I was able to get a property for $399,000, like a duplex there for $399,000, which is like a brand new construction, which is unheard of, you know, there. But like the willingness to kind of go out of the norm, right? And get a little bit creative and just trust in your gut that you're going to figure it out and you're going to make it work, I think is so freaking huge. And you can hit gold like you did. And the funny thing too is you didn't go into the property being like, oh yeah, this is going to be a crazy cash flowing property that's going to crush it. But when you saw what was possible, you got creative and like building the carriage home and all of that. And those are the kind of things we need to have in today's market in order to succeed, I think.
Yeah. And honestly, the way that I underwrote that, just like you said, was I was going to rent the basement for $1,200. I was going to build a carriage home and rent that for $1,300. And I was going to rent the upstairs for $1,500. And I was like, that's great. I'm happy a couple $100s a month. And for me, like the concept of buying something and having someone else pay your mortgage, like for the duration of holding it, like understanding that you can buy real estate, own it for 30 years, rent it to someone else who's paying your mortgage. Now you're getting mortgage pay down. If my property never changed in value at the end of 30 years, that's $500,000 that I have not been contributing to. Obviously, there's maintenance and stuff. But for me, that was my expectation going into it. And then, you know, since then I've gotten into short-term rentals and I'm way more greedy with what I want out of my investment. Like if I did nothing else, I'm so happy that that's what got me started.
Completely. I love that. And so have you always just kind of had that like go-getter mentality or like growing up, was it a little bit different? I'm just so curious, just in terms of your past, like how did it, because now I'm like, I see you and you are a go-getter, right? Like you are out there crushing it.
Yeah, I have to attribute, honestly, and I look at this now as like my husband and I are starting to think about like what are some of the values that we want to have in our family. And I have to I really just have to thank my parents. Like you and I talked about this, but like my dad was always just like, if you're going to go and do something, like make sure it's like big. Like, like if you're going to sell something, go and sell jets. I'm selling houses, not jets, but like
Close enough.
But, you know, it was always like, if you fail, who cares? Like, you can come and sleep on my couch. And like, I realize like, you know, what a privilege that is. And not everybody has that. And I don't know that I would be who I am today if I didn't have that. And, you know, my parents never like had to, you know, pony up like funds or anything like that for me. But just knowing that like they were supportive of me failing. And if I did fail, that like, it wouldn't be this like shameful thing, but like I could come back home and like rebuild and they were going to like help me and support me through that. I think just gave me so much confidence to do things that were scary. I will say though, that real estate was new for them. Like me starting my own business, me being commission only, they were really, really cool with that. But real estate was one that they were like, we don't want you to be like shackled to like a mortgage. Like, residence is not an investment. And like, there's truth in those things, but I was looking at it as an investor.
Completely. Which is so, okay. So can you explain the difference between looking at it as an investor versus as a regular home buyer?
Totally. So I remember this is funny. And like my parents are like so wise in so many things. But I remember my dad being like, I feel like this property is in an area that is like too close to like like an industrial area.
Yeah.
It needs to be further. Again, you really don't want to like shackle yourself to like this high mortgage. Like, you want to be able to like move like as your business moves, and all of those things make sense. And when like someone's looking at like a primary residence, like right now, it may or may not make sense for you to have a primary residence in like your dream location. Like that could slow you down. It could make your monthly payment much higher. But when I purchased that property, it was always through the lens of, I'm not living here forever. This is going to be an investment property. What can I rent this for? Yep. And how will I do it? Who's my demographic? Does this location make sense for that? And if I'm not living here and I have to rent it, is it going to cover the mortgage? And so when I was coming from that frame, I just didn't get it. I was like,
Completely.
Mom and Dad, like, it doesn't matter how I like, rent this, like I'm going to be able to pay down my mortgage, and I'm just going to hold it for 30 years and have somebody else pay down my mortgage. And maybe
Completely.
that's simplifying, but that's what got me into it.
No, and it's so funny too, because I remember even when I was looking for my first property, I looked at so many properties and put offers in on so many, and I almost got trapped, right? Like I saw this adorable 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, adorable house, literally 3-minute walk from one of my best friends. I was like, oh my gosh, we can live right next to each other. I have no idea how I would rent this out. Maybe I would just rent it out while traveling, which, don't get me wrong, is not a bad strategy. But like for the longest time, I was like, I'm getting a duplex, I'm getting a duplex, I'm getting a duplex. But got kind of sidetracked. And I remember my mom, she was like, oh, go get that one, because she wanted me to live in a cute, adorable house. But then I remember like taking a step back and being like, this is actually not helping me reach my goals. If I want to get out of my corporate job, if I want to have more optionality, I need something where everything is covered, period. There is no, like, this has to be an investment. And it's so funny because the same thing is happening to one of my students right now. She went to go see a property in Chicago with her mom, and like, it was a single family home, all of this stuff. Her mom was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is so cute. And then we kind of chatted. I was like, well, what's your goal at the end of the day? And she's like, yeah, this isn't actually going to help me get me closer to my goal.
Yeah, I think that's so important to know, like, are you buying, and, Rich Dad Poor Dad is probably talked about, all the time on this show, but, are you buying an asset or are you buying a liability? Like, is this something that is going to be an income producer, or is this something that's going to take away from your income every month? And I really also love the freedom of like, let your assets pay for your liabilities. Yep. I have plenty of liabilities. No. Plenty of them, and like my assets do pay for those. And so a lot of times, like, I'm thinking about like building my real estate portfolio to be able to pay for the things that I like, which is, laundry being out and cleaning, and a car, and my primary residence, and all of those things, which we all want. But like, instead of like putting your active income towards those liabilities, like take your like passive income and then let those pay for like some of your lifestyle things.
Completely. No, I 100% agree. So how did you then transition into becoming both a real estate agent, but then not even just a real estate agent, but actually starting a whole brokerage? Because so many, we're going to cover this a little, but so many people, number one, come to me asking me if they should become a real estate agent. So I'm curious about your opinion on that as well. So let's start there. How did you even become a real estate agent?
Yeah. So actually, like I said, when I started, like, I just knew that I wanted to become a real estate investor. And so I actually had no interest in like having a residential real estate license.
Yeah.
And so I was like trying to find flips with like, this guy who is now my business partner, and we were doing wholesaling stuff. And so he was like, hey, Chantal, like, you should get your license. Like, it's going to be a good tool for you to have, even if it's just to like help list our flips. And I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it. And so I ended up like getting my license. And like, long story short, I had like a really crazy journey into like, I realized how much I loved sales. I realized how impactful like real estate was to people's like personal lives. And so I just, in like the quest to become a real estate investor, I was able to like help a lot of people on their journey too. specifically when I was doing flips, this is kind of like a funny story, but like our brokerage is called Good Neighbor Realty. And when I was doing flips, we would work with a lot of people who are in pre-foreclosure. And so I ended up finding out that a lot of these people wanted to get full market value for their property, and it didn't make sense for them to sell them to our company at a deep discount. And so I would say, like, let us list it for you, because they were literally going to lose their homes.
Yeah.
And so that's where like the company name came from. That was like the niche.
Oh, that's so cute. I had no idea.
Yeah. And so that was like the niche that I started in, and like word just spread that like I was the girl who like listed all of the pre-foreclosures, and I had all of these bankruptcy attorneys like sending me people that were going to lose their houses.
Oh my gosh.
And so like our business was really like growing and expanding at that time. And then COVID happened, and all of a sudden pre-foreclosures didn't exist for years.
Yeah.
And so I remember like the day it happened, like I was having people calling me left and right. Hey, Chantal, we don't want to list. We want to pull it off the market. Like,
oh my gosh.
And so my business like literally shut down overnight. But at that time, I was living in my property, renting out the basement on Airbnb. I'm feeling like I'm just like high on life because of how it was making. And so I just became a natural evangelist for like this type of investment strategy, because I didn't know anybody else who was doing it. That led to helping, you know, several people that I met through like meetups or whatever, identify and purchase their first short-term rentals. And we really just built this community of people who were some of the first to like really try this in Colorado. And in Colorado, navigating like legislation and income potential, like it's like so tedious. And so from my own curiosity, I followed like trying to figure out, how do I help people find areas that they can legally do short-term rental in, because I believe that this is the best real estate investing strategy. It's changed my life. It's changing other people's lives. And it just naturally became like I was the girl that people came to about short-term rentals in Colorado.
Okay, I love that. I did not know any of that story. So that is fantastic. And it's crazy because it's like you saw an opportunity, right? Like and it was during a time where there was so much scarcity, right? But like because you had your real estate still running in the background, like it gave you so much more abundance. And I'm like, that is the power of real estate investing. So I guess here's a quick question though. So during COVID, did you ever have a point where like your bookings went away and then they were like rebooked or anything like that, since people couldn't travel for a while?
Okay, y'all, do I have something exciting for you? Now, I just came out with a brand new free training on exactly how you, yes, you can get started investing in real estate within the next 3 months. Because if you're someone who wants more freedom in your life, the ability to travel the world and do the things that you actually want to do in life, you're going to want to listen up. Trust me. Now, this training is freaking awesome. I literally go in and spill the tea on the number one strategy that is working right now, like literally today in today's market. And I go over how to look at deals and make sure that they actually cash flow, and how to set your properties up so that you can run them from anywhere in the world. Like I literally have managed my properties from over 6 different time zones. So if you are stuck in analysis paralysis, you don't know where to start when it comes to real estate investing, but you know that it's something that you want to do in the future, this training is going to be for you. So to check it out, click the link in the show notes or DM me the word hack, like HACK on Instagram, and I will send you the link. Now let's dive back into the show.
Yeah. And so I remember that being really scary for clients who had purchased like just before that point. And, you know, in everything that we were doing, we were always talking about exit strategy. So like short-term rental, like this is going to make you the most money. But if that doesn't work out, like here's how you pivot to like long-term or mid-term rental. And so I started to get nervous. I think it had to be like February or March, because everything was shutting down. Like nobody was traveling. And I ended up putting my property on Zillow and like Furnished Finder, got traveling nurses, got pilots, was, you know, sharing all the things that I was doing with my clients. And then, you know, that was maybe 2-3 months. And then everything really boomed up from there. And we just had no idea that was going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy how the switch went from no one traveling to then everyone just needing to get out of the house and go anywhere.
It was crazy. Like just thinking back at like how much money people were making on very simple investment properties. It was just right place, right time.
Completely. I love that. And so what is because, who would you recommend actually get their real estate license? Because so many people come to me and like they hear, because I have my license. Right now, I literally just do referrals. I'm not a practicing agent, even though it's technically active, but I don't do anything. Right. But a lot of people come to me and they hear that I, do referrals and stuff like that, that they wonder if that's something that they should get themselves into. So who would you recommend actually get their real estate license versus who would you recommend not get their license?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's something that a lot of people minimize is the amount of skill that it takes to be a good realtor. And I don't mean, that you're so good at wooing people and getting them to agree to buy a house. So that's like part of it. Like, I mean the fact that you are dealing with a large asset and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you are dealing with a lot of complexity, and no like two deals are the same. So first off, you have to like deal with like the lending portion, like understanding that intimately, connecting your people with the right like resources for that. If you don't understand that intimately, like you could connect your person with someone who's just going to tell them no, or not even have like a loan product that's a good fit for them. And so that's a problem. Like understanding like lending is a huge part. And then another huge part is like understanding like the components of a property, like what, is something that is a concern in inspection. What is the dollar amount for that? Like, can you negotiate that with the other agent on the other side of the deal? Like, what's normal in your market for people to agree to do or not agree to do? And what do you do with the client who's just scared, like out of their mind and wants to cancel every other day? Right? Well, and like you have appraisal, you have like all of these like different things. And I think that there's such like, we're essentially practicing law as realtors, and like you are practicing real estate law without an attorney license. And I just think that it's not a casual like career to take. And so something that I talk to a lot of people about is, a realtor is worth their weight in gold if you have a good one.
Yeah.
And it's not something to be taken casually. And for you to become good at this, it really does take reps. Like most of our agents take about 12 months with like careful mentorship, careful supervision before like they're really ready to do it on their own. Obviously, that can be sped up if you're doing more reps, but I feel like you need several different deals, a lot of exposure to the process to be good at it. And so if you're passionate about like real estate and learning it, want to use it for yourself, great, but you have to get the reps. Otherwise, if you're doing it casually, you're likely going to do a really bad job, and you're going to put yourself at risk and potentially somebody else at risk.
Completely. Well, and people don't realize how much people management happens too. And a lot of people don't actually like doing that. Because everyone sees it on, Selling Sunset and all of that and how glamorous. Like, it is not that glamorous.
Yeah. There's no end for the amount of time. Like, people are always like, realtors are paid so much or overpaid. And, I'll say like on some transactions, it feels like, oh, like I was maybe a little overpaid for this one.
Yeah.
But on others, you're like, I was far underpaid for like the amount of time that I spend. When you think about like how much you would have to pay like an attorney to be on call 24/7, 7 days a week for you for 30 days, how much is that worth?
Yeah.
Because in reality, that's what our availability is. Like it is 7 days a week. It's at all hours, like whenever there's something that needs to be addressed. And like, yes, does it always happen in those hours? No, but like you have to be available to deal with stuff as it comes up.
Yeah, it's 24/7. And then like you're working usually during the most inconvenient hours, honestly, because it's going to be, after work hours. It's on the weekends a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like knowing that there is that switch. And I know for me, like I got my real estate license because at the time I was in credit card debt and I was working my full-time job. And my whole thing was, well, I might as well get paid to learn. But I was hustling. Like I would work all day long. During my lunch, I would run and see if I could show a house. And then after work, I'm like running around town doing all this stuff. And it's like, you have to, the people who are going into it casually will also not make any money, like straight up.
Why? It's too competitive. But on the other side, you know, the people who really can thrive in this, like there is unlimited like potential, like from an earning perspective, like you can attract the same type of people. Like I'm so grateful to work with people that are so like-minded. And like we've really gotten to like, you know, attract like those types of customers. I am a part of like life-changing impact for like my clients and now the realtors that are on our team. And, you know, I could talk about real estate until I'm blue in the face. Like so life-changing to me that it's natural for me to be an evangelist. It's like if I was not doing this as a realtor, like I would be doing it for free with my friends, my family, like because I really do just like love it at that level. And I love connecting with people. I love to negotiate a great deal. I love getting a new deal. And so if that's you, you should get your real estate license. It's an amazing career. It's a fast career. There's no limit to what you can do, but it needs to be taken seriously.
I love that. Drop the mic. So out of curiosity for you, what are you seeing is really working right now in Colorado, right? Because so many people, I know that there are tons of people right now looking to buy a property. They want to get started investing in real estate, but it seems kind of impossible. So what are you seeing that's working?
There's a couple of things. I mean, obviously, like short-term rental is still working. Colorado is like one of those markets where the best and worst part is that it's over legislated. And so because of that, like the best part is it's not oversaturated. And so we just have these like little pockets where you can like have like a gold mine without, you know, big corporate like hedge funds like coming up and buying everything like you see in like Florida or Scottsdale or Joshua Tree. And so I think like generally it's a good market for that. And then, you know, there's a lot of different strategies that are working right now. So if you were to go on Zillow and even filter by like rental, Zillow now has like a room by room like rental.
Oh,
pretty cool because it's such a need in the market. And
yeah.
so I'm having people buy properties that have like 5-6 bedrooms with, you know, multiple like bathrooms. And then doing that method, which I'm starting to see come back because of the affordability stuff.
Yeah.
I am seeing people do assumable loans these days, like where we have like multiple clients who are under contract on things that had an FHA loan at a 3% or a VA loan at a 2.5%. One of them is getting, and those loans are assumable. And so they're getting like amazing monthly payments that we're probably never going to see again in our lifetime.
Yeah. Can you explain to someone what an assumable loan is?
Yes. So FHA and VA are both loans that can be assumed by someone else. So let's say that you used an FHA loan to purchase a primary residence 5 years ago. You want to sell that property. The loan that you have can be assumed by someone else who wants to purchase it if it's an FHA as a primary residence.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that you have a $300,000 loan at 3.5% interest rate. You can actually have someone else take over that loan, qualify for that loan. And then for the rest of the equity that is owed, there's actually companies popping up to fill that gap and qualify you for a second loan.
Oh, I did not realize. I thought you just like had to come to the table with wait, that's huge. That's awesome.
Wait, yeah. So let's say it's like a $500,000 property to make things simple. If there's a $300,000 assumable loan, you assume that $300,000, but you still owe that seller $500,000 or $200,000. And so let's say you don't have the cash to do that. There are companies popping up in the marketplace now that will say, okay, we'll finance you $175,000.
Right.
So you put 5% down at maybe a higher interest rate. But now your blended interest rate is still far lower than what we're seeing today in the market.
Oh my gosh, that is huge. Oh, okay. New strategies. We love it.
Yeah. So that's like working really well. House hacking obviously is always like a classic. I'm seeing fix and flips like make sense. I would say proceed with caution right now just because the market has been like a bit a bit wild.
Yeah, I love these. There's so many good strategies out there right now. Like, you just have to get a little bit more creative. It is a little less simple than just buying a single family home. Well, no, you can still buy I bought a single family, but you have to like get creative. You have to start like looking at how can I make this work right? Because it's not going to be just as straightforward in your face as it has been in the past.
Yeah, like, I think a lot of people that I've known that have been long-term real estate investors for years and years and years, they're like, you just buy a house, have a mortgage payment that's less than what you can rent it for.
Duh.
And it's like, no, we're over here having to learn short-term rental, room-by-room rental, assumable mortgages, all of those things to make it work, because like chances are you buy a property at today's rates and the long-term rental amount for a single family home is either just going to barely break even or you're going to lose money every single month.
Yep. Especially in markets that are like seeing a boom in prices, right? Like it's just, that's not going to work anymore.
Not cool. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, I know you're about to launch a new course, right? So tell me a little bit about this course.
Yeah, we're so excited about this. So it's called STR Pro, and it will be available in probably the next 2 weeks. The course is totally done. It's 67 videos that are between like a minute and like 15 minutes. And it is everything that you would ever need to know about short-term rental. Everything from, financing to finding to what locks to use to management to automated messages, all the way up to cost segregation and tax strategy and scaling. And we just put our little hearts and souls into this course. And yeah, we'll send it to you, Olivia, to be able to share to anybody who's interested.
I love that. I love that. And it's crazy now that we have that kind of access, right? Because 5 years ago, there were no short-term rental courses. There were no like big proper real estate investing course that you're going to tell you step by step every single little thing. And it's also crazy to see how much the short-term rental industry has evolved over the last few years. Because kind of like what you were saying before too, before you could crush it with just like a regular short-term rental. Now you have to put a lot more work to actually get it to cash flow or do what you like beat out the competition. So a quick question for you, like what are some things you're seeing are needed for short-term rentals right now in order to compete with others in the market, let's say in Denver?
Yeah, it always comes down to occupancy, design, amenities.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the three. And I mean, it can depend. Like you can have, like a 2-person stay, but that needs to be in like a really unique, like maybe A-frame structure in the mountains. It needs to be priced for like honeymooners, or you can have something that's like 90s themed or Barbies themed, like in the metro. But again, like you have to like accommodate the right number of people. Like in the metro, we're seeing like the best things, perform at 12, 14, 16 people stays. So yeah, that's what's working, like great design. And also I'm going to throw in pricing.
Yeah.
Too. Like I was someone who just was like a set it and forget it on my automated pricing stuff. I use Price Labs for all of my properties. And then I realized that like I wasn't looking at it for weeks at a time, and I was leaving a ton of money on the table because I wasn't adjusting that or like putting in the right rules, like as far as like, your far out bookings should be more expensive and what type of discounts like you start offering when you get closer. Like there is a technical side of short-term rentals that really matter in today's market.
Oh, completely. I know. That's like, I remember when I got my first short-term rental, I didn't even have dynamic pricing. I was like, it is one price. Like, I think I'd put it up a little bit for the weekends. And then the funny thing is I missed out on my first Mardi Gras, like, pricing it higher. I'm like, you idiot.
It happened.
Oh my goodness. So it's like now though, I'm literally, well, like now we've hired people to help us, but like we're in there at least 1 to 2 times a week at a minimum, going in, changing things, like really like taking a look at things. So yeah, it's crazy how much more technical that's gotten.
Yeah. And I would defer to you. Like, what are you seeing working in design? Because I mean, you're obviously like a designer, and I've seen some of the exciting things that you have coming up on your property, like what are you focused on?
Yeah. So it really depends on your location, right? And it's like, everyone says, think of your ideal avatar, think of your ideal avatar, but also like, how are you going to capture people's attention? Really pay attention to what other people with that same number of bedrooms, same number of bathrooms is having. Like, what else can you add on top of that that's going to make them pick yours versus the other person's, right? And branding is really huge too. And I know that's something I didn't used to focus on as much, right? But like the more you can really create a brand of diehard fans, like then you stop becoming so dependent on platforms like Airbnb, VRBO. You now have your own separate clientele that you can reach out to and they love your place. And it's crazy because even my first place in New Orleans, I still have people that will reach back out to me every single year. They're like, oh, the place is booked for the days that I wanted to stay. I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad that you thought to came back here.
Yeah, like that's like, it's so much easier to, not have to acquire new customers every single time.
Exactly. So if you can find a way to like create a really strong brand, and you can kind of do that with a theme, you can do that with like, it's all about the small details, right? Like if you can really kind of curate those small details so that when someone comes in, same way you would if you went to a really nice hotel or anything like that, and they're like, oh my gosh, this place is the bomb. Like you want to kind of curate that sort of feeling for people.
Yes, I so agree. That like carries so much today.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, so Chantal, I'm going to ask you the 3 final interview questions that I ask everyone. So number 1, what does your ideal perfect day look like?
Ooh, I mean, you and I had a good start to like last Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say, like, I love spending time in nature. Olivia and I got to do a beautiful hike that I've literally had like 5 people ask me where it was since going. So I would say like perfect day, like starts with like something active, something outside, like in nature. I have a cup of coffee that I'm drinking on my way to like whatever activity it is. My dog is invited, obviously. Yeah. And then like I would say like the rest of the day is like time with friends. I love a good glass of wine. I love a good laugh. I love a new restaurant. I love a walk. And so my perfect day has a combination of all of those things. And then I am in bed, no questions asked, passed out at 9:30.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Literally. So I've had people over for the last few days and they don't go to bed till midnight. And I'm like, how is this possible? 10 o'clock is that's when we're hitting the hay. We're down. Well, because it's also like I have a 7 a.m. workout every day and I like to have my whole morning routine. I'm up at 5 kind of situation. It's impossible to do that if you're going to bed at midnight.
Yeah, no, I absolutely cannot go to bed at midnight.
No. Like, what am I, 23?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh my goodness. Okay, question number 2. What is your mantra?
Ooh, I was not prepared for that question.
Sorry.
What is my mantra?
Or just something that you tell yourself over and over and over again.
I think it's like, why not you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is so true.
It really is, because I think that, it's so easy to be like, oh, like, this person is doing that, and just think that, that like they must have had like an in, or they have like some skill set that like you don't have. And then really like pausing and being like, do I want that? Is it worth my time? Is there any reason that I cannot do that? Is it a skill set that I'm losing? And like, what do I actually need to do to get where I want to be? And like, just not limiting like our own potential.
100%. No, it's so funny because literally right after this, I'm recording a solo episode that's called If You Catch Yourself Saying Must Be Nice, Listen to This. Because, it's so easy to do. I'm not saying like I don't do that every once in a while. I think we all do. But you have to catch yourself during those moments and think, what is it about yourself that you're telling yourself you are incapable of doing? And do you actually really want it hard enough to make it happen? Because you can at the end of the day. We all have the ability to do whatever the heck it is that we want to do.
Right. And it just comes down to like, do you want to put the effort that it's going to take to get there? And like, what do you need to spend time on to make sure you're prepared, like once you actually get there?
Exactly. Okay. Last question. What does wealth mean to you?
I think wealth means that I'm not having to say no to things that I would like to do.
Yeah.
And so like wealth means that if my family wants me to come down for no good reason at all, that I can choose to go and do that because I have the means to take off or pay for the transportation or, you know, show up and participate. And so I think for me, like wealth is access.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so freaking true because at the end of the day, I think most of us, what we really want is like freedom of time, freedom to be able to do the things we want to do with the people we want to do them as we wish, right? Like that is such, at least I know for me, that's such a big why for me. And it's crazy because we think of wealth as all of these opulent things, like going on lavish vacations, although like, let me say that, like that's part of my wealth for sure. But like going on these lavish vacations or getting the yacht or the big house or the car. But for most people, it really is just that time freedom, right? Like being able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it.
Or even as little as, you know, it's more expensive to like eat organic or have like a fancy like gym membership or like this or that. And so I think it's having access to the things that you value. And for me, like being able to say like, yes, I can choose like this level of health, or yes, I can choose this level of like time off or like, you know, time with these people or whatever activity it is. Like wealth is the access to do those things.
Completely. I love that. Chantal, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you? Maybe they want to learn more about short-term rentals. Maybe they want to buy something in Colorado, or maybe they want to buy your course.
Yeah, I would love that. You can find me on Instagram at Chantal Duame. That's ChantalDuame. You can also find us online at www.thegoodneighbors.com. We're on LinkedIn at Good Neighbor Realty.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Chantal. This was fabulous.
Thanks, Olivia. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Wanderlust Wealth Show. Now, don't forget to follow the podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you love this episode, it would literally mean the world to me if you shared this with a friend or a family member or literally like anyone off of the street. Like right now, go ahead, share it so you don't forget, or post it on social media and make sure to tag me. I love seeing what you're listening in on and what you resonated with, and I'm just so freaking thankful for you. I'm so freaking excited for you. I love you, and don't forget, life really doesn't have to be hard.